Well, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing at Oak Ridge with Globus Compute and related things. So motivations for all of this, we have scientists, they want to do science. Thanks to Tyler for this graphic here. This guy is very jealous of her workflows and wants in on the action. And I should also note a lot of this is going to be important for areas around existing IRI initiatives and workflows and technologies, and plugging these two together. So this is kind of the high-level overview of where we're at right now. We've been at this for a couple of years. So last year at this meeting, I believe we demoed the ESGF project integration. At the beginning of this year, we formed a task force. So this task force is this group of people here. It's led by Tyler. He would normally be presenting here, but he couldn't make it this week, so you're stuck with me. So my purview into this, I'm on our systems acceptance and testing team. So I'm kind of coming at this trying to understand what all our users are going to be doing and how we can test and do regression testing and things like that to make sure everything's working the way it should be. I've bolded a few folks here that have been really instrumental in pulling all of these things together, and also helping pull together these slides. I kind of just have a high-level overview into a lot of this. So thanks to all these folks for pulling this together. Yeah, so back in the spring, we deployed the multi-user endpoint on a couple of testbed and training systems, so Defiant, Odo. We've got one project going on now, OpenCosmo. We saw that earlier. There's some work there that needs to be done, moved over to the multi-user endpoints. We have our facility API. There's work ongoing to integrate those two, and we'll talk about that. And really all of this is looking forward to moving to multi-user endpoints on a system like Frontier. And so there's some challenges and things that I'll get into here in a minute. So this, I just wanted to pop this slide up for a second. This was from last year, the ESGF project. I just kind of wanted to show that for a second. So yeah, OpenCosmo, Patrick showed this earlier, so I won't go into that in too much detail, but there's work there to be done to move over to the multi-user endpoint and get that fully utilized so that it's running as the actual user in their OLCF user account rather than an automation user. And then there's some discussions and really broader discussions, not just for this project, but for other projects. How do we manage a system like Frontier that has an allocation system? So especially like a web portal, how do we manage that? Can like a user go in and like use up the entire allocation? How does a project forecast how much time they're going to need for their users? And then things like longer queuing times. You get to Frontier, not that you're going to be waiting forever, but if you're in a web portal, how do you manage that user experience where it's going to be potentially longer than what? It's not going to be instant, right? So a couple other things on the back end here. Moving over towards the HA endpoints has been great. This allows us to meet some of our stricter identity and authentication requirements that we're going to have moving forward. Especially like Frontier is a higher security enclave, so there's more requirements and different things. This also allows us to define custom identity providers. So like we can restrict access to specific email domains, for example. This also allows us to meet some of the data encryption requirements and the auditing and logging requirements. So as we've been transitioning to the multi-user endpoint, we've gone through a couple of iterations of a custom identity mapping bit. So the way this is set up right now, we do email whitelisting. Right now it's Oak Ridge and Argonne emails. And then those emails come down from Globus, and then we do an LDAP query to try to map you against LDAP and find your OLCF user account. Then we also pull in the user IDs and the group memberships. We do a couple of other checks here, like right now, this is just hard-coded to this particular project and some staff groups, but eventually this is going to get pulled into our resource allocation management system so that we can enable specific groups easily to be able to use the Globus endpoint. And then, of course, we also have to check to make sure that that user can access that compute resource that you're trying to get to. So we've gone through a couple of iterations of this. I know I was doing some very early testing. I ran into a fun situation where I have, if you do an LDAP query on my email, it pulls up like 3 different user accounts. So that was sort of fun. I was submitting stuff from one system and then it was coming back from Globus and then running as another user. I was trying to figure out where my Slurm output was going. So that was fun. At least it wasn't just a random account. It was my user account. But that's not really ideal. So yeah, doing these extra group ID checks kind of helps with that. And I should also note that this is just kind of a weird corner case. There's only like maybe a half dozen other staff members that have multiple user accounts. There's not any reason a regular user would have multiple accounts, but just kind of a fun little corner case we ran into. So our facility API, S3M, I'm not going to go too far in depth in this. We don't have a lot of time, and I kind of only have a high-level understanding of it. But we are working on an action provider that will connect the two. And so this will allow our users of the facility API to tie into Globus flows. And so the reason we're doing this is this provides a crucial layer of security compliance and access controls that we need, especially as we move towards Frontier. There's some extra things that we need to do. So like, for example, our access policies are structured around the idea of like an SSH session where a user logs in, does their thing, and then logs out. Extending this to a long-lived API token that's kind of running autonomously, that's kind of scary, I guess. So there's some requirements there. We also have some requirements on where the user authentication and that ultimate token creation takes place. So we're working towards integrating this with OLCF, which is our external user-facing project management allocation tool that PIs and users can use. And so this is where that token creation will happen. And so that meets that requirement. And then it also, we can set a definite timeline on those tokens so they're not just indefinite. And then once they have that token, then that restricts the user, those workflows to the particular project. So they can only access that project's resources, that project's files, and so on. And so that's really kind of this link that we need to allow users to get in on this, especially as we move into like Frontier and some of these other higher security requirements. So conclusions, we have some users using endpoints. We're working on integrating with our facility API, S3M, that's ongoing. We have this task force, and we're excited to see ideas and what other folks want to do. I've seen a few other ideas for projects. I'm excited to see where this goes. And so if you're interested in learning more or have ideas, let me know. Or I can try to answer questions or get you connected with somebody on that task force that can. And this guy is happy now, so job done.